All right, so this is the Tuesday, June 21st, Human Services Background Study Subcommittee on Disqualifications. Welcome, everybody. And Will, if you could do a formal roll call, that would be awesome.
Certainly, Madam Chair. Ms. Dawson. Ms. Dawson. Ms. Evans.
Here.
Mr. Geffen. Mr. Geffen. Mr. Urban.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Kaser.
Present.
Judge Kulik.
Present.
Mr. Page.
Present.
Representative Robbins. Representative Robbins. Ms. Sherlock.
Present.
All right, Madam Chair, 6 of the 9 members are present. A quorum is present.
Awesome. So the next thing I will do is adopt the meeting minutes from June 14th. I don't know if people had a chance to look at them, but if there are any corrections or additions, now would be the time to add them. Hearing none, I would like to adopt the minutes. If there's no objections, I'd like to get them approved and added. Perfect. So we are down to number 53 on the list, which is controlled substances and drug crimes, which is chapter 152 of the Minnesota statutes and 609, which is felony level drug and alcohol convictions. We decided last time that we needed to have some more conversations about some of these. I think we decided, well, she wrote person on here. Did we decide drug convictions were person crimes?
Madam Chair, I think what we had discussed at the end of the last meeting was that drug crimes were had enough features of person and property and were essentially their own unique thing, such that we were going to put them in their own individual category. Okay.
All right. So I pulled up the 152 statute. Should I pull it up on the screen, or do you want to do that, Will?
Madam Chair, whatever you find more convenient.
I think if you, because I have a really tiny screen, so I feel like if you pull it up, then I can like fill in the squares.
Certainly, Madam Chair.
I also have my criminal handbook for Minnesota, which has all the criminal statutes in it. If we need more information, just let me know.
I think that's perfect, Judge Kulik. So the first one, 152.021 is controlled substance crimes in the first degree.
The question whether or not we consider it a person crime or a property crime.
Well, yeah, I guess yeah, and I guess the other part of this too is you know, for me, and this is where it gets real personal for me. I don't have any first degrees, but I think the sales and possession part, and then also like the stacking stuff. And first degree is one thing, but when we get down to like third and fourth and fifth degree with the stacking, like it's real easy to have a little bit of drugs in your pocket and get caught 3 times in 90 days. And that doesn't make you a drug dealer. That makes you stupid or unlucky, in my opinion. And so I think I'm just going to take a lot of notes and maybe let y'all kind of work this out. And if I have something really important to say, or like pressing or whatever, I'll pipe up, but this all gets pretty personal for me, so.
Give some context on a couple of different ways. We've got a drug treatment court here in Mille Lacs County, and I'm the judge for it. And when we are looking at eligibility to be in drug treatment court, when it comes to a first degree sale, that is so much selling of so many drugs in our community. That really, we view it as a person crime because it's sales to enrich oneself well beyond just to support your own habit. On the other hand, instead of just that, and so that's first degree, you go down to fifth degree, which can be a gross misdemeanor, depending on how much, can be also a felony, but the law demands the first time that we now do a stay of adjudication. Well, because we really are focused on you're only hurting yourself here, right? And we want to get you treatment. That's the real problem. You're not a criminal, you have a substance use disorder. And so I think it's wonderful that the legislature at some point in time came to see that that's how those should be handled. Now we have some things in between too. So we get, second, third, fourth, obviously. And what we do is we just exercise, we do a deeper dive into what kind of sales, how much sales, and part of our assessment is, was someone selling to support their habit? And if they were, that's a different person than that we really want to work with than someone. I've had people who don't even use or barely use who commit first degrees because it's really about getting rich. So something to think about. The other little piece is the largest legislative district of the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe Indians is in my county. And they have their own legal services department. And that includes their own members who have child protection issues, also criminal defense. But they will only do criminal defense if it's the lower levels, because they do the same kind of analysis. If you are selling, if you're a tribal member, an enrolled member, and you are selling large quantities to other members, you're hurting the community. And so no, you don't get free legal services. If on the other hand, it's a substance use disorder, then you get free legal services. So that same kind of analysis, and it's like what Ms. Evans said, it's a continuum. And there's no hard and fast lines, except that first really is bad and fifth really is just a substance use disorder. And anything between that, we're going to need, I don't know, Ms. Kaser maybe can give her perspective. But that's what I see here when we're talking about differentiating, which is why when I heard that felony drugs all across the board gave you an automatic 15, I was shocked, frankly, that there wasn't any differentiation in all the different levels.
So as a note in that, to say that 15 years across the board doesn't seem justified, would that be a good note?
It's a really good note. The offenses are grossly different. Their effect on the community is grossly different. Someone suffering from a substance use disorder who is on a great recovery journey, who wants to get back into the workforce, those are some of our best licensed drug and alcohol counselors because they get it. They understand the experience of going through recovery. Their BS meter is fabulous. And it just seems a crying shame to not let folks like that, do what they could do best and help society. So yeah, that's exactly the note I'd put.
Any other thoughts from folks, Max or anyone else, like the differentiation between sales and possession. I'd like to get something in the notes about that as well.
I mean, Madam Chair, I would echo what Judge Kulik has to say, and, you know, the definition of sale is extremely broad, you know, providing controlled substances to another without the exchange of money can count as a sale. And you know, every county has different types of diversion programs and thresholds for when they will charge certain crimes. And, you know, these are just tricky ones. And I think the amount that you have or the amount that you are providing to someone else or receiving from someone else does not tell you a lot. And so I think individual analyses need to be done regardless of sale or possession, quite candidly. I mean, we do know that some of the first degree, some of the second degree, higher degree, or the more serious drug crimes do cause immense harm to the community. And particularly right now, we are seeing a huge number of deaths from fentanyl overdoses, and that kind of controlled substance possession and sale is much more serious than, you know, even just huge amounts of marijuana, for example, or other substances. So again, that you kind of have to, the statute is pretty extensive, and but the language doesn't tell you a lot about the underlying offense or the underlying behavior, I should say.
The other point that I'd like to make is that there are such differences depending on if you live in a county that has active drug treatment courts, because the legal incentives that are given for entering and successfully completing drug treatment court are amazing. Instead of someone who is looking at a commit to prison, our county attorney, who believes deeply in people's recovery, offers not just stays of adjudication, but continuances for dismissal if you are successful. Now, it's a long road to be successful, but and that you can have somebody who does not have that opportunity to be in a drug treatment court, and they just have to, they're going to get, could be the same behavioral thing, but they don't have that option, even though they may get their comprehensive assessment, follow the recommendations, go through treatments over housing, aftercare, and be on the road to recovery. They've also recovered, but instead they're going to get a felony conviction by virtue of where they live and the availability or not of a treatment court.
Yep, we see a lot of that differences in sentencing based on geography. Same thing with the amount of probation someone's given, and whether they get released from supervision early, and how early. It has a lot to do with judicial district, and oftentimes instead of other factors. So okay, and would we say that these, so the things I wrote are, and I'm sorry if, do you guys want me to pull it up on my screen? Oh no, because he's sharing his. So the things I wrote are 15 years for all is not justified. These folks are our best LADCs. Possession and sales are different crimes. Definitions of sales are very broad. Different substances are more dangerous, and some counties have drug courts. I guess I should probably do a little more on that. And that option's not available for everyone.
So I wonder, I agree with the statements about, I think a broad across the board, 15 years is not justified. But how do we begin to break that down a little bit in terms of thinking forward and how we want to make recommendations? And not knowing, my ignorance is showing, not knowing enough about how these get charged out or what means what would be some suggestions about what would maybe constitute a longer disqualification period versus others? Is it the degree? Is it, the substances? Is it sales? What would kind of be those factors for people?
So, I don't know. I don't know how we would figure it out. A first degree possession is 25 grams or more. And it's 25 grams or more. And then a first degree sales is 25 grams is 50 grams or more within 90 days on one or more occasion selling it on one or more occasions within 90 days.
Madam Chair, maybe one of the ways to approach this would be to use the sentencing guidelines grid in determining, if I don't know the grid well enough on these cases, but, just trying to structure any tiers about disqualifications around the scheme that they have set up in the sentencing guidelines. That's just a brainstorm. I don't even know if that would be useful or not, but it's food for thought.
Here it is. I have it in my hand. The drug offender grid. And what I can tell you is with a 0 criminal history score, the only presumptive commit to prison is first degree and aggravated controlled substance first degree. So even second, third, possessing substance with intent to manufacture meth, fourth, fifth, even meth crimes involving children and vulnerable adults are not presumed commitments, if that means anything.
And so what that means, Tiffany, is that Ms. Kaser, is that everyone else, any of those other crimes, you would get a probationary sentence instead of going to prison on your first crime. So
in fact, on a fifth degree, let's see, you have to have a criminal history score of 6 or more to even end up with executing 14 months in prison. So that means the Sentencing Guidelines Commission doesn't consider you a danger to anyone really but yourself because of your substance use disorder. So that's very, very telling.
Well, you got to Google drug sentencing guidelines. There's a separate one for drugs.
Yep, the drug offender grid. It's under 4C. Also, when we give people stays of adjudication, we don't have to follow the guidelines because the guidelines are only presumptions if there's a conviction, which I think is kind of weird and crazy because we can have somebody who might have been a presumptive commit to prison, but if you don't enter conviction, if you stay the adjudication, there's not even that's not considered a departure. So there's no departure report. kind of crazy, kind of weird.
Um,
See what I mean? D2 on the bottom, controlled substance crime, 5th degree. So 12.1 means stayed commit of a stay of execution, 12 months in 1 day, 12 months in 1 day, 15 months, 15 months, 17 months, 19. But stay of execution, the assumption is that there'd be a stay of execution. And always under terms of probation, and a comprehensive assessment and follow recommendations. So you have to have a lot of criminal history to get to that, to get to any time at all. And this is an acknowledgement that these folks are not dangerous to the public. They are dangerous to themselves.
yeah. Yeah. And I would just push back on that a little bit to say, like, I know a lot of people that manufactured methamphetamines, and this is just picking one out from the, top of the grid. The other grid, not this grid, but that I don't know one person that manufactured meth, including myself, that didn't have a substance use disorder, right? That wasn't doing it because they were getting high on drugs. And so yeah, it's these are tough conversations, because once somebody has done their sentence, gotten out, did their probation or did their parole, and now we're talking about, at a minimum been 5 years off parole or probation, or the way the law is now, 15 years from that time. When do we stop holding this against them as far as work is concerned? That's the conversation we're having right now.
And I would suggest that drug crimes are so unique vis-a-vis other crimes, that really, because like Ms. Evans said, it's a rare person who doesn't have a substance use disorder themselves, and that's always part of it. And we consider that something deserving of medical treatment, right? And there's that overlap of what is driving you or compelling you to commit the crime. That substance use disorder also getting in the way of your impulse control at the same time. And compared to stealing a car, robbing a bank, or a lot of other crimes that we talk about, this one I think warrants a really finessed look by whoever is examining it. I can't see a one size fits all at all, except for the 5th degree. My goodness, if you have been in recovery for, as far as I'm concerned, 5 years, you're great. You are good to go. The 1st degree, yeah, I'm comfortable with 15, but everything in between, there's far too many moving parts for us to have, I think, for us to have a hard and fast number.
Yep, the sales at 2nd degree drops down to 3 grams within 90 days. That's 2nd degree sales. And like, to get a little bit personal, like, I could do 3 grams in a day, like buy some and sell half of it to a friend to like pay for the stuff that I did, like that. And that, according to the law, is considered sales. And so like, and 2nd degree sales, or if you sold a gram 3 times in 90 days, like the way that the laws are set up, like anybody that's using drugs is is considered selling drugs, just because of the community and the nature of the drug like universe. It's very easy to commit these crimes.
Madam Chair, my suggestion, and I've mentioned this a few times, but I think and this should be true about this section, but when we rewrote the foster care licensing standards, we wrote a whole section about evidence of rehabilitation, and I think that should be, I don't have a problem necessarily with, shorter disqualification periods for controlled substance crimes, particularly given the racial disparities in how they're prosecuted versus the kind of generalized similar use across races. But I do think that, the evidence of rehabilitation should be an important factor for these cases if they're going to have a disqualification period that is reduced. And I don't know if I've summarized it before, but the evidence of rehabilitation kind of puts the onus on the individual applying for the license to demonstrate that they have completed treatment or other services. It includes the ability to offer letters of recommendation from your employer or other individuals of positive repute in the community. Education that's been obtained since the incident, change of evidence of any change in behavior. So that would be my only comment for this section as well.
And that is what a set aside is all of those things. And it takes sometimes up to 6 months to run through. And, we have that data now out of the data subcommittee, and 70% of people who, the data analysis subcommittee, 70% of people who apply get a set aside, but only 60% of people are applying. And so, therein kind of lies part of the workforce problem, right? And so, how do we look at this list of crimes and maybe decide that, some of these folks, based on the, lack of risk of harm to the community, maybe don't need to run through that set aside process, and maybe don't need to do the things that you're talking about. That would be what I would maybe ask this group to do, to be able to look at this and say, maybe these people after, a certain amount of time don't need to do that anymore. Or maybe don't need to do it at all for a 5th-degree possession after they're off parole or probation.
And just to push that back on that a little bit, Madam Chair, an absence of conviction is one piece of evidence that you are not using or selling substances, but we don't catch 100% of the people who are distributing or using controlled substances in our society, and I think if you're going to go into one of these caretaking roles and you have, and I'm not talking about 5th degree conviction necessarily, but some on the higher end of things, a lack of or an absence of convictions does not necessarily, I think, provide some of the it doesn't necessarily mean that they've engaged in all the services that you've talked about, and all the stories that you and Mr. Irvin have explained. And I understand that there can be issues with providing that evidence of rehabilitation, but for some of these state sanctioned jobs, I don't know that is necessarily too much to ask.
Um, so, so are there other thoughts about, like the differences between, the degrees? I'm trying to look at the statutes. Like second degree drops down to 6 grams for possession and 3 grams for sales. Third degree doesn't really have any numbers. It's just like a mixture. Third degree is a mixture. And it's packaged in dosage units that equals 10 or more dosages. And then the possession is a weight of 3 grams for powder and 10 grams for mixtures. And and then fourth degree drops down to oh yeah, more units and stuff. When do they ever charge fourth degree? I've never even seen anybody charged with that.
Not often. I don't see it either. I see first, second, third, fifth.
Yeah, this one doesn't even have any numbers. It just keeps talking about dosages.
Oh, it's a unlawfully sell one or more mixtures containing a controlled substance classified in Schedule 1, 2, or 3, except marijuana or tetrahydrocannabinols, or sells to a person under the age of 18. Or any amount of marijuana or tetrahydrocannabinols in a school zone, a park zone, a public housing zone, or a drug treatment facility. So it's pretty narrow slice.
And then a fifth degree is clear as mud.
It's any small amount of an illegal drug. So people get charged with it if a search turns up a pipe with residue, for instance.
Except on your first time, right? It's a gross misdemeanor.
Right, gross misdemeanor first time.
So that's kind of the rundown of those as far as like the amounts. So, so do we have some consensus about any stuff to push forward as recommendations? Is that what we've been doing? Well, have we been?
Anybody, how do people feel about a fifth degree as having a disqualification of only 5 years, but there has to be evidence or some verification of being in recovery for, I don't know, a certain amount of time?
I wonder about if that still is a little bit too broad, for 5 years and someone to have to go through all of that work to submit, how they've been in recovery and such, I wonder for this group if, and maybe we can't reach that consensus today. I know we don't have all the players here. It's like, where's that line where it starts to become maybe a risk to the community or harm, and maybe, again, using those sentencing guidelines is a good way to look at that. Something that's not going to be a presumptive commitment to imprisonment. Maybe we want to really think about that. And maybe there is a line where we say, oh, we have to have some, evidence of rehabilitation, and some things it's maybe not a disqualification at all. I would propose, I don't know where those lines are. I just throw out there, but it seems that like a fifth degree for everyone, what I'm hearing today, maybe doesn't rise to the level where it would even be a disqualification at all, or at least not a 15-year for sure. But
that's my feeling. It's more that the person is in recovery, and whatever amount of time, we collectively feel is enough. Relapse can always happen, and yet people who understand substance, who suffer from a substance use disorder and understand it, I think there's a greater guarantee than just hiring somebody you don't know anything about, because there are a lot of people who are abusive with even prescription drugs or alcohol or something else. I think there's actually a safety net with people who have been in recovery. I just don't know if there's some consensus magic duration that we're looking for. But you're right. Why, if somebody's doing really well and that's it, boy, I would support no disqualification if there is verification of a certain duration of recovery.
And so I wonder what that could look like for, I mean, I'm thinking to myself, like, that's what they're doing already in the set aside process, but like thinking outside the box, like, could that be part of the application process that gets turned into DHS or something, so that it doesn't take all that time? Like, they could turn that in on the front end to DHS to say, I do have a background, it falls under this statute, and here are my letters of recommendation and my treatment notification, so that it can so that it doesn't have to even hit the background or like the set aside portion of that. Like, just kind of thinking outside the box, you know what I mean? Because it's the set aside process that hurts. It hurts the person applying, and it hurts us as employers. Would you say that, Dave?
Yes, I mean, obviously a lot of the people that we interview have a drug crime, and it seems so broad to me that 245C makes any felony in Chapter 152 a 15-year disqualification. We being those of us hiring in the treatment world, have a rule on the set aside. They changed that, I believe, a year ago. So it's supposed to be an automatic set aside if certain criteria have been met. Can't be a permanent disqualification. No crimes in subdivision 4, paragraph B regarding maltreatment. Successfully completed treatment program at least 1 year prior, and no subsequent disqualifying crimes. And then abstinence for a period of 1 year prior to the reconsideration request, must be seeking employment in an SUD treatment facility. So there's language currently in there that allows people with a drug disqualification to be hired if they're looking for work in an SUD treatment facility. But everybody else that's represented here doesn't have that same opportunity. So that's one issue. And then the other issue is, I think 15 years for some of these lower level possession and even sales crimes are very, they seem to be overly unfair. And it's tough for me to say that because I'm sitting here having one of those crimes. But like you said, Gina, if you're using, I look at, there's a second degree, if you have more than 3 grams of cocaine, well, people buy cocaine in an eighth of an ounce, which is 3.5 grams for $250. And that becomes a second degree controlled substance crime. That's pretty tough. And pretty tough to avoid if you are living that lifestyle where you're using and you're buying or selling that amount. A $250 purchase would be made by just about anybody that has an addiction. But that would be hard for me to go in front of a group of legislators and explain, I think, and have them say, wow, you're right. That doesn't seem like a lot. So now you're just arguing degree. But to me, to lump all of these together doesn't seem to be appropriate. And 15 years seems to be too long. And I'm thankful that they did change the statute a year ago to allow for people to get a set aside if they're working or applying at a treatment facility. But I think there's more to life than working in a treatment facility if you have a substance use disorder background. And so somebody wanted to work in one of the other agencies, they don't have that same opportunity. So I don't know what the right answer is. Those are just my observations for what they're worth.
That's funny that you said that, Dave, because how we got the drug sentencing change, one of the ways that we got the drug sentencing changes done that made a 1/4 gram or less on your first offense a gross misdemeanor is I brought a 1/4 gram of salt in a baggie and passed it around to all the legislators, and they said, oh, that's not very much. And so
if you, yeah, I think you'd get a lot of people that do drugs would agree with you.
yeah, and so did they. So yep.
And some of it's the fear of the unknown, but I get it. I mean, right now, when it was 14 years ago for me, but right now you don't know. There's so much fentanyl that's being laced into drugs. It doesn't matter how much you have, you could be killing somebody or yourself. And so, I mean, then how can you say that's serious or not serious?
Yep.
I mean, it's all serious right now because it's such an epidemic.
One of the things that troubles me, having, I think I've mentioned, I served in the legislature, and the things that spur, the changes in the law or new laws are the sort of rare but awful sensational situations. Yeah. And there's a certain amount of political expediency to look tough on crime, even though looking tough on crime or passing these things doesn't make us any safer necessarily. There was always a movement to lower the age at which children could be tried as adults. There is every year. When I was there, they wanted to lower it to 10 so that we would have 10-year-olds being tried as adults. It's not bad enough we throw away 14-year-olds. Let's throw away 10, 11, 12, and 13-year-olds too. But it had political expediency. And, drugs are scary and drugs are bad and, don't do drugs and we don't want our kids. And everybody knows about the opioid epidemic, and people are reading about fentanyl, and we know what's happening with overdoses. And to me, I think that's where some of the harsh, overkill response of these disqualifications has to come from, where it's like, ooh, that's bad. And being involved in drug court as I am, I've got this saying, recovery isn't about bad people becoming good people. It's about good people becoming healthy people. And that is the truth. And I don't know how you battle the politics of this. It's gonna be tough. You're gonna look soft on crime when you want to let these people, but these are good people, a lot of whom are now healthy people. They want to work. We need them. And we're not doing greater society any good by shutting them out of real lives, because you don't give them good options for a healthy, law-abiding lifestyle, frankly.
So I couldn't agree with you more. So would we say controlled substance crime first degree, would we say that is person? Or
I think that's person, because those are the boatloads that are coming through.
yeah, I wish the legislature would find another bigger, because I feel like the difference between 25 grams or 50 grams and 500 grams is a big difference. Like, we need a kingpin statute to really, I never was a drug dealer, and I had 50 grams of drugs in my pocket more than once. And so, and then just dropping down to I just want to get this filled out for John and Lucas, do a good job being in charge. So then going down to 6 grams and possession, 3 grams of powder, and then it just drops down from there. Would we call second, third, fourth, fifth, where do we draw the line where these drug charges stop being people and start being property? Would we say fifth is definitely property?
Fifth is definitely property.
Does anybody disagree with that? Oh, it looks like we lost Max. I'm just reading through some of these. And then what about fourth? There's a lot of talk about kids in here.
When you are selling to a minor or attempting to sell at a school, and by that they don't mean a college or university.
Yep.
That's a person crime, and that's a person crime involving some vulnerable people, because it's not just under 18, but it's also vulnerable adults. And so I see those subsections in 4 as being person crimes.
And so, but what about the possession part of it?
not so much.
Yeah,
The possession, possession, of those amounts of those schedules, quite different than the sales at elementary or middle schools, or to vulnerable adults or to kids, really different.
yeah, I would agree with that. You agree, Ms. Kaser?
I do, yeah. There's certainly a difference between sale and possession, and we might find that with some of the other degrees as well.
Yeah, and that was the point that I was kind of trying to make earlier about, even with the, and that's why I think even the point that Max was trying to make, about like, these are so hard because, there's a big difference when law enforcement goes in and finds, for the second degree, right? 6 grams of powder in one baggie compared to 6 grams of powder bagged up into 6 1-gram packages, right? And lots of times that happens, that they drop that sales charge or whatever down to possession charge or whatever like that. And so like Max was saying, like, these are so case by case on some of these, whether they're so to even say like on the like the second degree, for those to be considered property crimes because of that it's less, because that it's less drugs, like the risk of harm to the community for 6 grams of meth. And then I look at it like, what if it was 6 grams of heroin? That feels different to me, right? Because if it's 6 grams of heroin and there's fentanyl in that heroin, like the risk of harm goes up. Do you know what I mean? And so I am with you guys about like this is not easy.
Yeah, there's one more point I want to make about 4th degree, because yes, it includes sales of any amount, on school property to children, to vulnerable adults, but it also includes, and it's a felony, selling any amount of marijuana in a park zone. If you sell any amount of marijuana, a joint in a public park, that's a felony. And wow, we're really going to say, sorry, you can't get a license for 15 years.
Well, I personally feel like 15 years on any of these drug offenses is too long.
Even a first?
I do because so do you feel like somebody that has a first degree drug sales should have the same amount of disqualification time as somebody with like a robbery charge or like a domestic violence or something like that? Like, you gotta like put it in comparison. Like, if we're gonna still keep the 15-year disqualification, if that's gonna be our recommendation, like, what are we gonna keep that for?
Well,
and is this going to be that thing, or is it going to be for other things that we consider more? Because I don't feel like this is that thing. I feel like we have some other things that are that thing, and this would be like a medium thing, not a 15-year thing.
To me, the first degree sales, because it's rarer, but it's part of what I see here. Here's how I usually see it in my community. I see it coming from Chicago, going up 169 in great quantities, and the folks selling it knowing when per cap day is each month. And that is when the enrolled members get their $933. And the overdose death rate is unbelievable. Mille Lacs County has always been top 4 for per capita overdose death rates in Minnesota. So it is, selling those great amounts is an absolute scourge in my community. and kids are down, and everything's got fentanyl in it these days. And I read the obits in the local paper every week, and my heart breaks. So yeah, first degrees, I do see as that thing.
Yep, we need a new statute. Because I see lots of first degrees where somebody sold 10 grams 3 times to undercover and got a first degree. Like, I see a ton of them in the work that we do. And the fact that those are the same crime breaks my heart, right?
Right,
Like,
because those are very different crimes.
it absolutely is. And the fact that there's nothing county attorneys can do besides charge those same 2 people with the same crime is like, that's not justice. And so, and the fact that we're talking about, like, because it's the same crime, that there's no other way besides counting them the same and sending it to, you know what I mean? Like, so it's hard that, we're talking about the same 2 groups of folks and no way.
And
to
that's what the
separate
point
them
I
out.
made with drug crimes more than any other, because they most often include a substance use disorder. There's so much difference between situations for the same crime, more so than any other crime that I deal with.
Yep. So it's 5 o'clock. This is the hour, right? Well, and so I want to honor everybody's time. Let's just take a peek really quick at third degree so I can get some thoughts down, and then we'll circle back to this next time. So this is about mixtures and dosages, 10 dosages. This too has stuff in there about sales to persons under 18. And then possessing on 1 or more occasions within 90 days, 3 grams, getting caught with 3 grams within 90 days, or 10 grams of mixtures, or 10 kilos of marijuana. Good grief. Possessing mixtures within a school zone or public housing or in a treatment facility. So again, these are hard to suss out because I feel like both of them have both people and property in both sales and, I don't know, that sales is pretty deep, employing somebody under 18 to sell stuff.
Yeah, if that were the subdivision, that certainly would make it
Yeah.
a person crime. And sadly, I've seen that, younger family members used as mules.
Yep. So I would say the sales piece of it is people. And there's no
Yes, sub 4. So subdivision 1.4 definitely is a person crime.
Yep. And then what do we think about possessing stuff in a school zone, park zone, or public housing? Would that make possession sub 4? Or are we gonna call possession a property?
Well, what's a little troubling is what if you live in the public housing zone?
Yep.
That almost becomes tied to poverty.
Mhm.
Because I own my home. So the same amount of drugs that I would have in my home of the same type and sharing them, suddenly it's an extra layer of crime if I don't own my home and if I live in public housing. That I've always had a little issue with that. I can see the school zone. It's always a little scary when somebody has individually packaged illegal drugs taken into the school.
Yep, but we're in possession.
So, right. So yeah, with possession though, again, public housing.
Yep. So would we say for this one, possession, third degree would be property?
Yes,
Okay.
I would, but what's the consensus?
I would agree, because I think it would take something more to probably get to that sales, right? And so that's the differentiation, but just to possess is, I don't know, it's different. I see it as a property, I guess.
Okay. And there's more on this list, obviously. And then I guess if we could just do this one more to finish this, do you want to jump to second degree so we can just finish this up? This first section of them. And so obviously the sales, because it's it has the sells to someone under 18 years of age. So we'll put that down as people. And then but the possession, what do y'all think about that? It's 6 grams or more. Or
In the second degree, I've got 25 grams or more. Under controlled substance in the second degree, subdivision 1 is sales, subdivision 2 is possession crimes.
yep.
And that's a total weight of 25 grams or more. Oh, containing, cocaine or methamphetamine. 10.
So the new statute, he's got it up from, this is from the reviser.
Okay.
It's 6
Oh,
grams
thank
containing cocaine, heroin, or meth.
Okay.
And then 50 containing a narcotic other than cocaine, heroin, or meth. And then 50 kilograms of marijuana.
Madam Chair, this is actually the 2012 version of the statute, but as I recall, 245C specifies that version for some reason.
Well, I'm reading from the 2022 edition of the criminal law handbook. So
Specifies the 2012. It changes with the statute. So every year I'm almost positive that's how it works. Every year when the criminal code changes, so does the 152 stuff.
well, they amend them. There's always tweaks in the there's an omnibus bill for crimes and public safety and all that. Okay, so this is
Oh, pardon me. Yeah. Okay. That's Minnesota statute section 69.21 only. My
Okay.
apologies.
Yeah, so this is current. What you're looking at is current, right? It's last year's stuff.
No, Madam Chair, Judge Kulik's version would be correct then.
Okay.
Yep. So second degree is a person is guilty of a controlled substance crime in the second degree if a person unlawfully possesses one or more mixtures of a total weight of 25 grams or more containing cocaine or methamphetamine. But it's down to in the alternative, you possess a total weight of 10 grams or more, and you've got an accomplice, you or an accomplice are displaying or threatening or otherwise employing a firearm. The offense involves 3 aggravating factors. So it's either 25 grams or it's 10 with aggravating factors and the inclusion of a dangerous weapon.
Mm.
So
That might rise it up to more of a person crime.
the dangerous weapon part, yeah.
Yeah.
will you send me that? So I can pull it up? Well,
Send you this.
yeah,
Yeah, yes, Madam Chair. And I just pulled up the 2021 version of
Okay.
statute.
I just want to get this right. So,
Yep.
and I don't want to keep people any longer. So, so we decided the, definitely sales is people. And then what about the possession? How much is the possession? 10 grams?
Well, if all you're doing is 20, it's 25 grams if it's just possession without the other aggravating factors, which include dangerous weapons.
Okay.
So it's kind of interesting that they said, but if you are brandishing firearms and have 10 grams, that's enough for a second. If you're, if you don't have the aggravating factors, it's 25. So, that tells me what the legislature thinks is that, you are not, as far as public safety, you're not as much of a threat, clearly, if you have 10 grams and no weapons as 10 grams and a weapon.
And if you go to first degree, it's 17 grams, according to the 2021
All right, let's see.
for sales.
Let's see, yep, yes. One or more occasions within a 90-day period unlawfully sell one or more mixtures of a total weight of 17 grams containing cocaine or methamphetamine. Or only 10 grams and you're using a weapon, and or you have two aggravating factors. And the aggravating factors can be within a 90-day period, sale of a total weight of 50 grams or more of amphetamine and hallucinogen, yeah, and then dosage, individual dosage units too. So the aggravating factors give you, yeah, put you in a whole different subset. Man, there's just so much here.
Yeah.
I know we're wrapping up here. I do need to log off here
Yep.
to get home. So it's
Me
been an
too.
interesting conversation. I know we probably didn't land very firmly anywhere, and it's complicated. I think this all is.
Mhm. For sure it is. So, and hopefully with John and we'll have to circle back and with the recommendations or whatever and finish up this list and I think with John and Lucas here will be better. So we got a little bit of stuff done. Thank you guys for your time, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Ms.
or
Evans, and
next week.
we knew last time that there was just so much here to chew on that it deserved a look, and we can't even do it in an hour. And we really were moving on it. So